How's it going, people? Roller42 here. Do you guys remember Lawbreakers? The game that Cliffy B was releasing as his official returning to the gaming industry after quitting post Gears of War? How Cliffy B and his studio banked all the hype and marketing on it, boasting that they were making the Dark Souls of first-person shooters, how they were making another billion-dollar franchise, and how basically this was $29.99, none of the $60 multiplayer only bullshit. Well, at the time of this recording, Lawbreakers has been nothing short of a resounding failure. It is so much of a failure and the game is so abandoned that the developers in this month, at the time of this recording, decided to finally abandon the game, since of course nobody is even playing it anymore. Instead, a couple of days later, they announced that they were working on a new project, and thus a trailer for a new game came out called Radical Heights, and it is the game you see on your screen right now. 24 hours after the trailer was released, the game actually came out. It is in early access and it seriously shows, because we got a lot of things missing and a lot of things are still very rough about this game. But more importantly, the thing that is the most clear to me about Radical Heights is that it is a mark of desperation from Cliffy B and his studio. Why will I call it desperation? Well, before I do that and before I start ragging on the game and Cliffy B himself, let's give the game credit where credit is due. For starters, the game works. It is buggy and it is a little unoptimized right now, but it essentially works. You can basically jump into a game, play, have a grand old time, if you can actually deal with the very clunky controls and movement, because like I said, the game is early access, it's still rough around the edges. It doesn't exactly run all that bad, but even with the high settings on my 1060 of 6GB, the game is still kinda lacking. Like, it doesn't exactly look like something I'm maxing out or playing on high settings. Now, that is that. Of course, because it's in early access, it is supposed to get better, but here is where Radical Heights starts to fall apart and where it starts to show us just how desperate Cliffy B is. The game right now is riddled with microtransactions. Of course, it's a free-to-play game in early access. It is going to need all the funding it can get, but the way this game is going about the microtransactions is, well, it's not exactly very nice. It's not something that I will openly support, because you see, when you start the game and you basically choose to go into a match, the loading screen immediately tells you about the microtransactions, it tells you the conversions, and it tells you exactly how much do you want to pay in magical bucks in order to get the gear you want to get for this game. And of course it also tells you about the Founders Pack that you can get, which is of course part of the course with every other free-to-play title out there. You see, like I mentioned before, I understand when a developer really wants to make money with a free-to-play title, but when your game right now is prioritizing the advertisement of your microtransactions instead of, you know, making sure that the first impression of your early access game is that it is functional enough to go on and have a fun match, well, you are kinda starting to lose favor with me. And I already know that the 3 or 4 people that enjoy this game are going to come out and tell me, but Roller, it is a free-to-play title, you don't really have to buy microtransactions, they're all optional, they're all cosmetics, there's nothing wrong with cosmetic microtransactions. And you're right about that, there's nothing wrong with the game giving you something that just lets you change your appearance. And of course you can just pay for them with the in-game money that you find, because that is another of the things that are trying to make Radical Heights more unique compared to Fortnite and PUBG, is that instead of simply finding the loot yourself, you actually have to loot cash registers, businesses. You have to find money yourself in order to afford the weapons that are in the vending machines, which is it is a neat concept. I can get behind that, but at the same time, the kind of money that you find in the game is the money that eventually goes into your main account. In fact, you can actually use one of the ATMs to send it into your main account to save it for whenever you want to spend it. And yeah, you can actually buy the microtransaction money with the money you find in the game. The problem is that if you actually want to afford some of that stuff, you better be ready to grind or to buy the Founder's Pack, because it costs quite a lot. I found that the one and only piece of clothing I found in the game, it actually costed up to over 20,000 in-game dollars or coins or whatever they are. So if I really wanted to simply play the game, gather the money, and unlock whatever clothing I wanted to get, I will have to play the game for hours. And considering the current state the game is in right now, I'm not exactly looking forward to do any of that. As a matter of fact, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Battle Royale games right now because, again, I'm not a big fan of simply walking around an empty map just to wait for somebody to kill me, or just to hope that I can be lucky enough to find a player before the player finds me and kill them instead. I know the few fans of the game will probably come over here and tell me that I'm being too harsh on the game and that I should be patient and give the game a fair shot until the developers update it and it reaches its full potential, because this game can actually be great once it gets the updates that it requires. And I understand this, because I agree too, it does have the potential to be great. The problem is that this game is being released with little to no marketing by Bosky. It is coming out at a time where Cliffy B made a fool of himself marketing Lawbreakers and sending that game to a very untimely death. This game is coming from a studio that has developed such a terrible track record that I actually have a really hard time trusting them. Of course, I am open to be proven wrong. I would love for Cliffy B and Bosky to prove me wrong and have Radical Heights be able to stand right there with PUBG and Fortnite as yet another great Battle Royale game. But as it is right now, I just don't see that happening anytime soon. I know I sound jaded, and perhaps I really am very jaded and very cynical, but it really comes off from all the bad experiences I had from developers and publishers that promised us the world and ultimately delivered nothing. Again, if Cliffy B and Bosky manage to pull themselves together and turn this into a Game of the Year contender, then it will be great. But until then, this game feels, looks, and plays like just a cynical cash grab and a desperate attempt to stay afloat in the market while the Battle Royale genre is still popular, and hoping that it can gain enough traction to fund it while the studio still exists. Because the way this game was released, it is pretty clear that Lawbreakers didn't make them enough money to even bother marketing Radical Heights. And that just doesn't speak well for Cliffy B and Bosky and their future in this gaming industry.